and the greatness of God and the power of his word and its ability to not be controlled by time. I'm going to take my time this morning. Is that all right? To truly experience the Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide, sight of God, you have to be or have been in a situation where you were in need or you are in need. See, God can be whatever you need him to be, even when you don't believe him to be it. And it's all because the purpose he has for us. Before the foundation of the world, we were predestined. I like that we call it, we was purpose-filled. I imagine, and I have a very wild imagination, but I imagine us being on a conveyor belt. Now, this is not how we was. This is just how I see it. We was on a conveyor belt, and God was blessing us with our attitudes and our style, our charisma, our smarts. He was just kind of pouring stuff in us as we go through this conveyor belt. We on it, and God filling us up. He blessed us, Some of us got the way we are because that's how God gave you. That's how God made you. Amen, amen. Some of us picked up some stuff along the way, but let's talk about what God did first. And we going through, and God blessed us, and he gave us our good looks. But that's another part of conveyor. When we got there, the good looks was there. And we get to it. We get to the last part. For me, I feel like the purpose was the last thing that God did. He gave us everything. He gave us our smarts. He gave us, our wit, our style, everything. Then the purpose is the last thing. And you would think purpose is the first thing because then he can build us around that purpose. But if you know anything about God, he does things total opposite of how we think things should go. So I feel now this is just my thing. I ain't saying it's true. I just feel like the purpose was last because then God can show his power in us. Because when the purpose is last, when God shows you a vision of what he wants you to do, you first thing say, I don't have what it takes to do it. And God says, I know you don't. Because I put the purpose in last. So I can show my hand and my power in you. Somebody say amen. Amen. Your purpose is not based on your ability. It's based on God's. It's not about what you can't do, but about what Jehovah Jireh being able to provide you with what you need to fulfill that purpose. When the time is right. Sometimes God shows us things and we want that thing tomorrow, but the time is not right. Sometimes God gives us a word and we say, oh man, this word must gonna come next month. This word must gonna come next year. This word gonna come real soon. But when the time is right, God is going to equip, somebody say equip, equip you with what you need to get to your purpose. So we look here, let's go into the story. Look here in chapter number 15. We understand that our purpose is not our ability. We understand that what God is doing, we're talking about for this purpose. And when we look at Abram, and God starts off the conversation with him, and he says, I am your shield. I am your shield. And God says, I am your protector. And if God's your shield, it don't matter if he comes from the front, the enemy comes from the back, he can come from the left, from the right, north, east, south, west, up, down. God says, listen, I am your shield. Meaning that I am going to protect you no matter what the situation is. God said that he is his shield. It wasn't based on the situation. It wasn't based on the fact, well, if it's too much, then I'm not going to be your shield. You know how it is with us. We'll help you, but if it gets too heavy, you might not get that same help. Because we have limitations on what we're able to do. Sometimes I just can't help you because I'm not able to help you. It's not that I don't want to, but me being human, I'm only able to do so much. But God says there's nothing that I can't do, so I am your shield. When they went out to battle, they had a shield for protection. When we go into battle, we have God as our shield for protection. That shield will never fail us. That shield will never break. That shield is the strongest thing ever. So he starts off the conversation and says, listen, I am your shield. Now, as we begin to go forth into the story, we're talking about for this purpose, we're really not going to talk about Abram, but we're going to talk about his wife. But we got to start with Abram first. I got to set some groundwork. Is that okay? And then we're going to segue into Sarah for this purpose. He said, I need to see great reward. I mean, God just, I love how God always just reconfirms himself. Because he understands that as man, we can get weary. As man, we can be weak. And he just reconfirms himself. Listen, I'm your shield. I'm your great reward. There's nothing greater than me. There's no treasure greater than me. I am everything you need. And then this dialogue begins to take place between God and Abel. You see, Abel and God. And Abel begins to talk. He begins to say, Lord, you know, you're doing great things in my life. But I still have no child. Now Sarah was barren. And Abel begins to conversate with God and say, Lord, you know, you said some things that I don't see how that's going to come to pass. And in that time, what happened was if a man and a husband, a man and wife was not able to have a child, they would adopt one of their servants' child, and that child will take care of them in their old age, and they will pass on the inheritance to them. And I can imagine Abram having this conversation with God and saying, but you said that my seed was going to inherit the land. You said I was going to be the father of many nations. You told me all these things. I was just kind of minding my own business. You came and told me to leave her, and this is what you was going to do. So we begin to have this conversation, and this dialogue goes back and forth, and God begins to reconfirm to Abram what he told him. He begins to tell him, listen, out of your bowels, the seed is going to come from you. It really doesn't matter what it looks like. See, a lot of times we spend so much time focusing on what it is, what's going on right now, that we lose sight of what God can do. But it's only natural. It's a natural law of things. If you are barren, you cannot have children. So if my wife is barren, how am I going to have a child? That's a legitimate, question that we have to ask. What goes up must come down. It's real simple. But God confirms what he told him. God is going to continue to confirm what he has shown you and what he has told you. Even though it don't look like it's going to happen. We just have to trust in God. So he has this conversation. They're talking. He says, listen, I don't have a child. I got to give it to my servant. God said, no, it's going to come from you. He said, well, God, since you said it, I'm going to believe it. Since you said it, I'm going to believe it. Let me come on this side, because I want to say that again. God, since you said it, I'm going to believe it. And God said, good. I got something great for you. So we get into this chapter 15, and we jump over to chapter 16. So we see God called Abram. We know that he called him. God said some things. He said out of his bowels, his wife is married. We got all that. We got the foundation, right? So we go into Sarai, and they start off chapter 16 by explaining some things. And let's look at that. Let's look at that thing. It says, and Sarah's wife bare him no children, and she said, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, and her name was Hagar. And Sarah begins to come up with her own plan. Sarah. We in Genesis chapter number 16. But when I think about Abram and kind of how he operated, I can only imagine that he already had this conversation with Sarah. I'm pretty sure when they left Ur, he told her, God said for us to leave. We're following God. I'm pretty sure he told her, God said I was going to be the father of many nations. God said my seed was going to inherit the land. God said, I just had a conversation with God in chapter 15. Let me tell you what he told me.